Can you teach urgency? And if you can, please bring that professor to the Seattle Kraken.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If you are meeting me virtually for the first time, hearing my voice for the first time, my name, Erica L. Ayala, your host of Locked On Kraken since the very beginning. And I work at CBS Sports as a women's basketball analyst and writer. I have also worked in women's hockey for a while, called an NHL game, done a lot of cool stuff. But I want to let you know that today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Indeed. And if you are still searching for great candidates for your company, don't search, just match with Indeed. We need some matching, whether it's line combinations. We need to match better with offensive power. The Seattle Kraken had 2 games over the weekend back-to-back. So we saw Philip Grubauer, we saw Joey Daccord. Unfortunately, what we did not see is a goal. The Seattle Kraken fell to the Ottawa Senators and then the Boston Bruins. In both games, the team was blanked. A big old goose egg over the weekend. And so it had me thinking, as I'm hearing the players after the game, as I'm watching what we see unfold, especially in that Boston game, just not a sense of urgency out of the gate. This continues to be a problem for the Seattle Kraken, but it is not an isolated incident for this roster, for this coaching staff. It is a problem that we see prevalent throughout the Seattle Kraken's tenure, very short tenure in the National Hockey League. So again, the question of the day, can you teach urgency? And who is the right person to do that? Now, on Friday's episode, I went on a rant just because I was pretty put out by how the Seattle Kraken were playing. And we know that they wanted to be able to make some adjustments on this road trip. They have one more game left in this road trip, and we haven't seen, not even close to the best of the Seattle Kraken. I mentioned the Montreal game, and that game was an outlier in so many ways. If you want to hear me talk about that, and Zame and I, who joins me on Thursdays, Zame and I talked about that. And so you can listen to last week's episode because we really get into that. But that was, even though it was an 8 spot for the Seattle Kraken, they win that game 8-2. The habits, or the lack thereof, the mistakes, the mental errors that we saw in that Montreal game in a win, we continue to see, and now the losses are racking up. So how do you teach urgency? Because we're going to hear from a bunch of people: Dan Bylsma, Yanni Gorde, Jordan Eberle, and Joey Daccord. How do you teach this urgency? And I think Joey Daccord and Eberle / Bylsma have a very different approach, and both are necessary. When you find a team in a funk, Joey Daccord, we've mentioned this on the show before, he is leaning into the positive. Even though the goaltenders have every right, in my estimation, to be really frustrated and put out because of what's happening in front of them, Joey Daccord has stayed positive, and I love that. Eberle, and this is something that he's done, he's officially the captain this year, but he's been one of the leaders on this team. And I've mentioned it before. In season 1, that really difficult time in season 3, we were hearing a lot from Eberle. He was taking the losses and responsibility. He was taking the responsibility of talking to media in earnest. We've seen a lot of Joey Daccord, and I think that's because of his performance. He's been great for the Seattle Kraken. I don't want to say that Philip Grubauer has not also been great. He has. In fact, if I remember correctly, if we go to the Seattle Kraken website and you look at Allison Lukan's post-game analysis, you see that Joey Daccord quality start against Boston. And then if you take a look at the game again in Ottawa, another, it's not technically considered by the analytics a quality start, but Philip Grubauer didn't lose us the game in Ottawa. I mean, he was negative 0.4 goals saved, 1.4 goals saved above expected for Ottawa. I mean, Ottawa got a really great goaltending performance. They got a really, really solid goaltending performance. So, there's that. I mean, Anton Forsberg for Ottawa was just great in that game, and that was the difference. And that can be deflating when you get got by a goalie, right? That can be tough in that Ottawa game. 22 shots on goal for the Seattle Kraken, 23 for the Ottawa Senators. The power play was a goose egg, 0 for 4 for the Kraken, 0 for 3 for the Sens. And then you just see like the saves. Of course, perfect save percentage. So 22 shots faced, 22 pushed aside for Forsberg. But, looking at Philip Grubauer, his save percentage was a .909. I mean, that's not insignificant. And, for me, the goals that he did let up, I don't think that they were terrible. He was expected to save more. Sure, you get that. But, we talk about this. The Seattle Kraken don't do a great job of cleaning up in front of the net. And actually, if you really want to be nitpicky about it, if I look at the Senators game, even the Boston game, there was almost too much traffic. And that's that balance. We've talked about it before. I remember a season or two ago, Vince Dunn kind of said, well, new fans, they don't know, you can't always disrupt what's in front of the net. And I think there's a balance. You can't, it's true. But not doing anything, which sometimes the Kraken fall victim to, is not the answer either. So anyway, how do you teach urgency? How do you teach urgency? And, Dan Bylsma was effectively asked this question. So I want to take you to what Dan Bylsma said. This is going to be after the Boston game. So I'll summarize what he said after Ottawa. But, he said the great thing about having a back-to-back, being on the road, is that you have a chance to turn the tide. And, he was asked something effective to, well, do you think that this is a team? Are they capable? Can they do it? And he said, well, I sure hope so. We gotta, he really wanted to see this team respond. Unfortunately, the team did not respond. And in fact, maybe diverted in some ways, especially on how they started the game in Boston. Here's what Dan Bylsma had to say post-game in Boston.
Didn't like the confidence to make a play and to execute in the start of the game for the first, 20 minutes or so. Just not, a lot of mentally stuck in not finding a play, not making a play, and those turnovers resulted in a lot of momentum for Boston in the first period. Especially in the first period, the opportunities we gave them from turnovers were really good chances from their really good players.
The last couple of days, players have been saying the right things going into games about what they need to do and how they need to build on things, and then it doesn't happen. How do you take the talk and turn it into action as a coach?
Well, you got to take the acknowledgement that it needs to improve and direction that we all want it to go, and now it's our job as players and coaches to act on it. And it's falling off the horse in Ottawa a little bit. This was our chance to say that wasn't how it was going to be, and it's maybe disappointing how we came out and started this game with both our mindset and our execution in that regard. And now we gotta turn the page here, learn the lesson, turn the page, and get to focused on Colorado.
So you hear Dan Bylsma there saying that it's a disappointing start to the game in Boston, given the way they played in Ottawa, given the conversations that they've been having. You have to have that sense of urgency. So how do you teach that? This is a team that brought in Chandler Stevenson. They brought in Brandon Montour. They brought in Dan Bylsma and 3 new coaches, including Dan, to the coaching staff. And I said it last week. I said it all off season. At what point does the front office get involved? How do you create a sense of urgency? Well, I'm going to go over the Joey Daccord way, maybe the Eberle way, a little bit of Yanni Gorde in the middle. And then I'm going right back to the front office, because one way, if your team isn't performing one way or another, whether it's because they lack urgency, they lack the capacity, they lack the leadership, you have to make a change. And Dan Bylsma can only make so many changes within the purview of his role as head coach. If you need personnel changes, that has to come from the front office. And we talked about it in the offseason. 2 consecutive months of 500 or lower hockey, and particularly lower, under 500 hockey, is not going to cut it. And that's the Eberle way. So we'll talk about that coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks is the best place for you to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. Just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win 100x your cash. You can run your game all season long on Prize Picks. And here are some things that I think you should know. Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit, Prize Picks also has put its members first. So all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And when your pick hits, you get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers a lot of different weekly promotions. So you're going to want to keep up on the app, everything from Taco Tuesday, So download the app today and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode also brought to you by Indeed. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast, Locked On Kraken. Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire, then you need Indeed. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala back here with you. And again, you can have the Jordan Eberle approach to the lack of urgency, or you can have the Joey Daccord approach to lack of urgency. I think both are useful. I think both are necessary. And it's about Dan Bylsma and the rest of the leadership from the players' side of leadership to punch the right buttons at the right time. So what do I mean about the Joey Daccord approach versus the Jordan Eberle approach? Jordan Eberle has always been a very straightforward kind of guy. If things are going well, he's given praise to everyone. If things aren't going well, he's taking responsibility. He's always been that leader. He's officially the captain this year, but that's his leadership style. That is his leadership style. And especially in times where there just isn't enough. There isn't enough offense. There isn't enough defense. There isn't enough urgency. Jordan Eberle is going to get right to the point. But you don't have to take my word for it. Here is Ebs. This is after the Ottawa loss. And I just want you to hear some of the language and the tone that he's using versus what we'll hear from Joey Daccord. And I think Yanni Gorde's probably somewhere in the middle, but I'll let you decide. Here's Ebs first.
Lack of execution. We were having a tough time making passes. It was tape to tape. The biggest thing I see is just, lack of battle level. We need to ramp that up. We have a whole other level that we need to get to here. Execution, power play, trying to find ways to score that, and then obviously simplify shooting and trying to get stuff around the net. It's a tough time to score right now, and we got to find ways to do it. And the biggest thing I see is just compete level. I see like one-on-one battles, stick battles, 50-50 pucks. Those have to be won. I understand you're not going to win all of them all game, but you have to win the majority of them to give yourself a chance to win. And whether it's wall plays coming out of the zone, whether it's stuff around the net, whether it's just executing on the power play, that stuff all needs to be fixed up, and we need to find it and get to it. The best part about this league is you get a chance to do it tomorrow. They're going to be a hungry team. Obviously, we know the position that they're in, and we have to understand that they're desperation, and we have to match that. We have to find desperation, or we should. We're 12 games in. We're one game below 500. We have to find a way to find some desperation and up our compete here. The season started. We got to get going.
So that's the Eberle approach. Hey, this is what we have to do. Let's go and do it. It's not a lack of ability. It's sometimes a lack of perhaps accountability, sometimes, or a lot of the time, a lack of urgency, keeping the main thing the main thing. But that's the Eberle approach. We have what we need, and now we need to do it. We have what we need. Now we just need to do it. Joey Daccord takes a different approach, which I think is also very important, and he offers perspective. Before we hear from Joey Dax, I want to offer what I heard as the rule of thirds. And I was listening to an Olympic marathoner talk about this recently. And it's the idea that you're going to be at your peak a third of the time. You're going to be at your rock bottom or somewhere in that area about a third of the time. And then a third of the time you're operating in, your optimal zone. So when you have a bad performance, you have to chalk that up to the rule of thirds. In the National Hockey League, that's about 27 games roughly in any one of those areas. And I think you can be in your optimal and lose a game. You can be in your, down and out and win a game. I think maybe Montreal is that. But why that's important is because you want to be able to have that perspective, not take things that are hard too personally, not, you want to keep your highs and your lows and temper the expectation moving forward. It allows you to attack your habits and not be motivated by the results. And that, I think, is what Joey Daccord has been doing a great job as far as his leadership. I think he's been doing a great job for the Kraken in that respect. I think he's been amazing in net, but the way he talks about the team, the way he feels supported by the team is that focusing on the habits and not the results. So Joey Daccord might be giving us a really good lesson in that rule of thirds. Here's Joey Dax. He's talking after the Boston loss.
Well, yeah, we were down, so we were chasing a lot in the second half. But we got to our game pretty good in the second half, but a couple posts, a couple good saves over there. I don't want to say like the puck's not going in right now because we scored 8 goals a couple games ago. Right. yeah, last couple of games hasn't gone our way. We just got to stay positive. Yeah, it's my job, right? Is to get up as few goals as possible and help the team win. And I was just trying to compete and fight for the guys all game and give them a chance to win. It's unfortunate to not come away with a win. And yeah, like I said, we just got to stay positive. It's early in the year. We'll find our game here before you know it.
Do you think you can build off something like the way you finished in the third period?
Absolutely. I mean, we definitely took it to them in the third. Obviously, they're playing a little more conservative because they're trying to defend the lead, but we had a post, a couple crazy plays. Pucks could have gone in for sure. And, we just got to stick with it. We got to stick to the process, do the right things, and good things will happen.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
You heard Joey there in that last clip, stick to the process. And that's what I think is great about the Joey approach. He's not too worried, and maybe this is a goalie mentality that he's able to bring. He's not too worried. He knows that it's a long season. Games are long. You got to really just attack what you can in that moment. Sure, momentum can carry over, but when you don't want to keep something, you let it go. And Joey has been great in giving that positivity. He's telling the team to stay positive. Even in games where I feel they didn't have a great defensive effort, he is backing up his team, saying so many block shots in front, things of that nature. And I think that's so important. And I want to end today's episode giving you maybe a hybrid approach, which is Yanni Gorde. Yanni Gorde is I think, he probably leans more to the Joey Daccord approach, but he's a great hybrid because he doesn't mince words like Eberle. He gets to the point. He's not going to be overly flowery, but he's not going to be overly critical either. I think Yanni really lives in that, hey, let's take each moment for what it is. And I really appreciate that approach. And so that's, I think, what we're seeing from player leadership. But again, what needs to happen, if anything, before the end of the year from the front office? I'll give you my thoughts coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode brought to you by one of our newer sponsors, and that is Built. If you're a renter like me, have you ever felt stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? Well, then it's time that you turn the rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. And that's where Built Rewards comes in. Okay, real talk. We've all been there feeling like we're burning cash with those rent checks. It's frustrating, right? But here's the deal. Built Rewards has figured out a way to make rent more rewarding. Say goodbye to the money bonfire and hello to a renter's revolution with Built. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch the Built points roll in. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes, redeem them towards future rent payments. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. You can use points to jet off on a dream vacation, put points towards a flight or hotel stay with 500 plus airlines and over 700,000 hotels and properties. Pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value points currency by the Points Guy and Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to Built. When you go and join built.com/LockedOnNHL. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNHL. Make sure to use the URL in our show notes so they know we sent you. Join built.com/LockedOnNHL. Start earning points with rent payments today. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if their bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL and, of course, us here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala talking to you here, and it was a tough road these last few games for the Seattle Kraken. Got a hard one in the Colorado Avalanche coming up, a little post, or I guess it's not post-election day. It is on election day tomorrow. So we have seen Colorado already this season. 3-2 game. So it was a close one. Can we, get into the mix with this Colorado team? A little bit of history between these two franchises. I think so, but we'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. I want to get to this hybrid leadership and also what I think might happen, especially if we drop a few more games here, even in November, ahead of the end of the 2024 portion of season number 4. Again, Yanni Gorde, to me, takes things as they are. So he has that Joey Daccord approach. He also wants to set expectations. He, like Jordan Eberle, does that through his actions. Yanni Gorde has a different role with this Seattle Kraken team. It's been a little bit of a, if you want to say, quote unquote, diminishing role, not in that top 6 for us. He's been playing a lot of center minutes and taking on a lot of leadership. He's done that also with having to be a little bit of an enforcer. Now, if you hear Jared McCann say it, there have been a few times he himself and maybe some other Kraken players have wanted to drop the gloves. No one's really taken the bait this early in the season. Just something to watch. But if and when we need someone to get fired up, you best believe Yanni Gorde is probably going to be in the mix. So he's no punk. Let's be clear. He can be positive. He's always talking up his teammates. Here's what Yanni Gorde had to say after, what was a tough loss. This is after the Boston game. Yanni Gorde speaking to media.
Well, we weren't connected at all at first, and I thought our breakout execution wasn't great. Our support wasn't great. Towards the end of the period, I thought in the game we break out cleaner. We put the puck deep. We didn't try extra plays. We knew let's just put it behind, try to win races, win battle, and eventually we're going to get our chances. And they're going to break some pucks out, and we know that, but eventually it wears and tears, and it gets harder on them, and then we finally get a break, and we're going to get our chances. But we have to start that way. But in the end, we have to get back to simple, hard hockey, connected hockey. Our breaking the puck out has to be a strength of ours, and it is not right now. Our transition has to be a strength of ours because the way we want to play fast, and so we got to clean that up a little bit. And then if we do that, we're going to spend more time in the O zone, and that's where the puck going in the net, it's going to come. If you play the right way, if you play in your structure, it's going to come. Thanks, Jordan.
I mean, Yanni, no lie detected. You want to play fast, you also have to play hard. You have to win those puck battles. And again, how do you create urgency? Disco Dan has been creating board battles in practice. He's talking to us about board battles after games, 50-50 pucks, like you heard from Yanni after games in team meetings. So I can't imagine that it's not something that the team knows needs to happen. It's just that they have not connected the knowledge that needs to happen with the urgency or perhaps with the result. When you do this, this will happen. And that's which approach is right. Do you go with the Joey Daccord approach? We have faith, stay positive, trust the process, or do you need to see results now? It's different for each person. It's different, quite honestly, for every scenario. But the results are also not there because the consistency isn't there. And that sometimes is hard. Listen, as someone who struggles with consistency herself, I completely get it. So what needs to be done? I said the Seattle Kraken was going to have a short leash, 3 months in the first part of the season to figure out if this is a winning hockey team. Right now, the urgency isn't there. So I still don't think that we know whether this is a winning team or not. Rule of thirds. Okay. We're a couple of, a dozen games into the season or so, give or take. You can make a bounce back, but we've also seen the Kraken bomb out early and never get back on track. That was season 3. So if you're the front office, you have to have a short leash. I've talked about this. We also know salary cap situation, not great. Is there a trade that can be made? What conversations should the front office be having now in the event that they need to make a move to save the season and to get the balance of chemistry right? I don't know that you can teach urgency. You have to have players that are going to respond to urgency. You have to have players that are going to play for pride. And sometimes that means that you're the guy and you go out and you play your game. Everything else be damned. And sometimes that means that you do whatever it takes to get the dub. But that's a balancing act between being a team player, trusting the process, being able to be vocal, to do everything you can to make the system work, while also being supportive if the system itself needs to be retooled. That's a balancing act. That is a balancing act. And if there are players right now that aren't going to commit to urgency because they're not seeing results, then that's a problem. That's a problem. If there are players that cannot commit to what it takes to be a fast team, just like Yanni Gorde said, you have to win the battles. You have to win the transition game. You have to stop the transition game on the other side. That's the only way you can play the way that this team says they want to play. If there are players that cannot because of their skill set or will not because of their mindset do that, then the front office has to take care of that. Sure, Dan Bylsma can change things around. He can omit people from a roster, but can he though? With who we have? Does he have enough luxury, enough warm bodies, healthy bodies to make those changes, those tough calls? I don't know. I continue to say that if we want to see this Seattle Kraken team truly be built to be a competitor, things have to change at the front office level. Their mentality, their mindset, I don't know, maybe down the road, their personnel has to change because things aren't clicking. You should not have to teach urgency at this level. You should not have to teach urgency, in my opinion, this early in the season. The season just started. What do you mean? You need to be motivated to win hockey games? I don't like that. If that's what's happening, and that's my read on the situation right now, I don't like it. And I'm hard-pressed to say that this is a coaching issue because, again, said it at the top of the show. These have been issues we've seen in other seasons for the Seattle Kraken. It's becoming a calling card of the Seattle Kraken. That's not what I think this front office envisioned. It's certainly not the game that Dan Bylsma wants to play. So what is going on? What is going to give? Because something has to. Something has to. Whether you want to play the Joey Dax game, whether you want to play the Eberle game, or be somewhere in the middle and take the Yanni Gorde leadership route, something has to give because this team does not have urgency. These are their own words. They don't start on time. They don't take opportunities to win 50-50 battles with consistency. That can't happen. Can't happen. So I don't know. We've got another game. We've got a game. And we'll see how this team responds. But a response is necessary. Dan Bylsma called for it between the Ottawa game and the Boston game. He did not get the response that he wanted, not until late in that Boston game. But you mess around with a team like Boston and you find yourself down. If you look at what Jeff Baker wrote, I guess if you want a silver lining, the Seattle Kraken had no business only losing by 2 goals. So there's that. They fought late. Why not start on time? Let's start on time. Do we have to go back to the more, doing shoot around or morning skate and just going hard, almost as if to psych the team out like that's the first period? And then maybe when the first period actually starts later in the day, they'll act like it's the second period. I don't know. Teaching urgency at this level tells me that there's something amok. I know spooky season is over, but that's still a great quote. There's something amok. There's something misaligned. There's something out of whack when it comes to the whole system. And that's got to get figured out. But we will see. It's a long season, rule of thirds, a dozen or so games in. There's a long season. And if you don't handle this now, do you even have a chance to catch up later? I'm curious to see if we hear any murmurs of the Seattle Kraken making some moves. We've seen moves in the National Hockey League already. I don't know why we always have to wait. I don't think we have time to wait. I've been wanting to see something, and I think it's going to have to happen during the regular season. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Hold fast. Stay true. Loud and proud we say, especially for tomorrow. Let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.